You're listening to The Power Project, and I'm your host, Brandy Voth. It is my goal each week to inspire and empower you with stories of women that are living purpose-filled lives and owning their God-given power that He's instilled within them. And in honor of A21 Walk for Freedom this week, we have 2 episodes this week versus the one that we normally have. We interviewed on Tuesday Melina, who was the Thai country director for Thailand, and you heard stories about survivors and the restoration process through A21. But today you're going to hear from my friend Kyra, who's the global director for A21, and she's going to speak with you about some initiatives that are taking place on the ground, but as well as her journey of pursuing her purpose from a very young age. I know you're going to enjoy it. Hey guys, and welcome back to The Power Project. I have another great guest with me today, and the last one was our first ever international interview on the Power Project podcast, and with just a couple of minor technical difficulties, we pulled that off pretty seamlessly. And now the next one is joining us from Bulgaria. So I have on today my friend Kyra, and she is another just mountain moving friend of mine. She's transplanted from Alabama to Bulgaria and living her best purpose-filled life. So, hey Kyra, how are you?
Hi, Brandy. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So I had the joy of meeting Kyra last month at the A21 10-year celebration. And we're talking a lot about A21 this week because we have the Walk for Freedom this Saturday. It's taking place in 400 cities in 51 countries all over the world. And it's a walk where we're bringing awareness to the human trafficking fight. And Kyra is one of the A21 staff members that is doing the work and moving the mountains. So we hit it off, and I think we kind of like spent the entire evening talking with each other, and she was a delight to talk to. I know that you guys are going to enjoy what she has to say. So Kyra is the global project manager for A21. Can you speak to what that title encompasses and what it looks like for you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I really got thrown into it. I'm not a technological or a software person whatsoever. Even my husband even makes fun of me because in Bulgaria they have a term called you're such an Indiana. So basically that term just means that like you can't do anything with like if your computer breaks, your TV breaks or something. You're just like, oh, I can't fix it. I don't want to mess with it. So it's hilarious that like God has led me into this position that I was just totally thrown in, but it's kind of been my history with A21. So yes, as a project manager, I'm looking at some software and technology solutions and different platforms, online platforms and things that are going to just designed to sort of undergird our growth and support our teams that are everywhere around the world. And it's just going to help things a bit more streamlined for us.
Well, and I think, and I gave you guys this compliment last month when we were chatting, but A21 has done so well on the global platform that you all have. And I just last week commented, I run a virtual franchise, so I'm very familiar with global platforms and technology issues and integrating new countries into the platform.
Right.
And I know how tricky and difficult that can look like. Mm-hmm. And, I commented to some business partners of mine that it's amazing to me that you can have walks taking place in 51 different countries, in 400 different cities, and we can all log in on this same webpage and register for a walk anywhere at any time. Like that speaks volumes to how you are handling that platform. So well done on that.
Well, thank you. It's been a trial by fire, let's say. We improve every year. You learn ways not to do things each year.
Yeah. What do Nick and Chris say? We're flying the plane without the wings.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. They like to keep it exciting.
And with that, speaking to that, not just like the technology aspect of it, but the execution of the technology department within A21, I think, is so crucial to your success. And the fact that, all of this has been done in 10 years, I think that the website's beautiful. It's eye-catching. It speaks to, it has the call to action. It pulls in people of all ages. But it really does like grab your attention and pull you into the fight. So yeah, you're doing a great job with that. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you. We know we have to be relevant and we have to be innovative. So we strive for that. So thank you very much. That means a lot.
And this is a new title, like you've recently just transitioned into the global project manager. But before that, tell us what your activity and your involvement with A21 looked like.
Yeah, definitely. So I've been with A21 for about 7-8 years now. It's almost all I've known as an adult, kind of most of my adult life, which is kind of crazy. So I started in Ukraine, actually. It was my first sort of post with A21, and I was a country manager there for 2 years, and I helped just oversee all of our development and operations there. We started a transition home there. We started the office there. We started education outreach, so we would travel to speak to kids and orphanages and schools just all around the country. So I did that for 2 years, and then they asked me to come to Sofia, Bulgaria, and to oversee this office as well, and Ukraine from afar to kind of head up our Eastern Europe operations. So for 6 years total, I was on the field with A21 up until just January this year. And in Bulgaria, it was this very similar operation, overseeing transition home and survivor care and hotline and Liberty, our social enterprise, and just the gamut of operations, and just also working with our amazing teams that we have on the ground that just lay it all on the line and give everything they got. So yeah, it was definitely a huge privilege.
Yeah. And we spoke with Melina, the Thai country director, earlier, and she gave us insight of what the ground fight looks like in Thailand and what the restoration process looks like. So we got some insight as to what that looks like and what your previous job position.
Great. She's just a great one to get that example from. She's the best.
Oh, so good. And I received a great compliment last month when we were at the celebration. One of the ladies sitting next to me at the table, she said, "Now, are you a country director?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, are you A21 staff?" And I said, "No." And she goes, "Well, you look like them. They're all just like young and outgoing."
That's so nice.
So I kind of laughed and I said, I'm a supporter of A21. And so I looked around and I thought, it really is impressive the amount of, and I don't know how many like fall into necessarily the millennial category or not, within A21, but I think that the younger generations get a bad rap. Mm-hmm. And I've been telling people this for quite some time. The younger generations that I see are really the ones right now that are really passionate about serving others and helping others and going out and doing. It's like there's this awakening. And so it's funny to look around and see. I mean, there's a room full of people that look like they're not old enough to have a mortgage on a house yet that are, directing countries and leading countries. So I'm impressed. I'm impressed with that aspect of it.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of ways in my life that it was exactly that. I was doing all of these sort of big grown-up things, in Ukraine and in Bulgaria, and having meetings with senators that were visiting and government officials in Ukraine. And yet I didn't own a car, and I had never rented my own place until I was in Ukraine. And so there's a lot of things that were backwards. And now that it's been 10 years, we kind of recognize now how young and stupid we were then. I'm like, oh God, thank you so much that you had your hand on us, because we did not know what we were doing.
That's okay. What's the saying? God doesn't equip the qualified. He qualifies the equipped, or he doesn't, you know what I'm saying? I'm getting it wrong here, but anyway, you're never too young to serve, and you're never too young to follow God's call. So, I think that that's a huge inspiration, and that's a takeaway that, I would love. Yeah. Because like so many of you guys are like just now like getting married and having babies and, you know, building families after you've been serving and doing big things on big platforms. So tell me a little bit of your backstory, like how you ended up being the country manager in Ukraine when you didn't own a car.
Yeah, definitely. Well, A21 was kind of a culmination of like different things that God had worked in me and in my journey that I could not have planned for. I couldn't have like expected it or anticipated it or worked towards it. I didn't even know such a thing like A21 and what my journey would be like with A21 until it was there. So it's a beautiful example for me personally of just God, how he is the master weaver and just kind of like weaves all these threads into your life. And he just uses everything. Like it's one of my sort of mottos is that God does not waste anything. Because I've seen that in my life. For me, it really started, you know, when I was a young girl, speaking of youth, just when I was about 13 or so, I remember like so many people do. I just remember praying very vividly in my bedroom, like, God, I want to do amazing things with amazing people. And I didn't know what that looked like. But I definitely believe that he answered that prayer in a big way. And like I said, something that I could not have foreseen. Practically, I had always felt a sort of draw, an interest, a pull, something that you can't give words to, that little feeling towards Russia and Eastern Europe and sort of the post-Soviet world that was, you know, had just kind of gone through this sort of 2 generations of really hard time. It just was fascinated and sort of worked towards it. I convinced my parents to let me go on a mission trip to Russia when I was 14 for a month by myself. I'd never been out of the country. And I'm like, y'all are crazy. I would never let my 14-year-old do that. What is wrong with you guys?
I have a 12-year-old like close to 13. And I'm thinking, I panic when I send him to church camp an hour down the road. And you went on a month-long mission trip to Russia. That is impressive.
I did. I don't like now looking back, I'm like, oh, wow. But I must just be a good lawyer and have good convincing skills. I wore them down, I think. But I just had that feeling, you know, that something in your destiny is part of there. And then I went on that mission trip, was absolutely miserable for about 3 weeks because I was totally out of my comfort zone, totally uncomfortable, even I had been homeschooled. So I was thrown into, you know, interacting with all these people and it was just way above my head. But finally that last week, something just began to click and God began to just speak to me and said to me that you need to learn this language and this is going to be part of your life. So I did that. I studied Russian in college, made sure I went to a university that had Russian as a language, even transferred universities after the Russian language department lost its funding after my first semester. Went back again on a sort of a State Department scholarship and just pursued it in terms of my studies. And then I graduated from college and kind of had this degree in Russian and political science and was like, okay, God, what do I do with this? But, you know, he didn't forget my prayer that I wanted to do something. So I went to Russia again. I just felt him say go. And so I went and helped out in some orphanages and volunteered with some missionary families and helped plant a church. But I think that what he really did in that time was network me with people and also just give me a feeling of what it's like to live and operate in that sort of environments. I did my master's degree there as well. And then I did my thesis on trafficking. Just felt very clearly that I was supposed to do my thesis on trafficking. I had been exposed to it as a teenager when orphans from Moldova would come and speak at our church and just talk about what trafficking looks like in their country and that girls are kicked out of orphanages at 16, the day they turn 16. And the country was so corrupt at the time that the orphanage directors would call traffickers to pick them up outside the orphanage on their birthdays. And so it was just thousands upon thousands of Moldovan girls had been trafficked that way, and they were telling true stories of their friends. And so that had really grabbed me as a teenager. And just, I'm not an emotional person. I'm not a crier, but for some reason I would weep every time these girls would tell their story. So that was one clue to me. And then upon finishing my master's degree, just felt God say, do research trafficking. And at the time, it was 2010. It was not the buzzword that was now. There was not the awareness that it was now. There was hardly any academic research out there on it. So it was kind of a random thing to do. A lot of my fellow students were like, what are you doing? But
yeah, I can only imagine because even now, you know, I mean, and I'm in rural America, but even now when I say trafficking, people there's so many people that don't know and, you know, are like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? So I can't even imagine in 2010. I mean, like my eyes were open in May of 2017, like just a year and a half ago, to really, you know, understand what trafficking is. So that's got to be God, you know, like you can't give credit to anything other than God for the fact that that was something that really pulled on your heart 8 years ago.
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely see his hand in that. And it just gave me, you know, it took me 6 to 9 months, I think, to write this thesis, but it gave me that time to just dive into all the research, into the mechanics, into the economics of it, the politics of it, just to really get to know it. And just upon coming, just in the research, I found A21's website. It was in the very beginning. It was a horrible, horrible website. We laugh about it now. It was scary looking, you know, it was all black and dark and chains and all that. But they had an internship program, a volunteer internship program, and I just randomly applied for it and kind of forgot about it. And several months later, I'd finished my thesis. I'd gotten home, gotten a job with the U.S. government, with the Army as a contractor. And lo and behold, about 4 months later, there's an email in my inbox from Phil Hilgard, our now executive director, who said, "Hey, we'd love for you to come and work with us in Greece." And I thought, what the heck, God, like, this is crazy. I can't do this. I just got a job. But then again, I heard him, and it's always that still small voice, you know, he doesn't speak super, super loud, but it's that little voice. He was like, well, what's the worst that can happen? They can say no. So I went and spoke with my boss at the time, which is the U.S. government, and said, hey, by the way, is there any way I can go and do this thing for 3 months? And they were like, yeah, sure. We'll hold your job for you. It's going to be a slow season for us anyway. And so, yeah, that's how my journey began, was with a 3-month volunteer internship with A21, which was another story of just getting thrown in above my head. And in the exciting, busy days were just so high paced. And it was just, my life was changed in that experience, definitely.
That's incredible. And so it's amazing to see God's hand at work. And it's so funny how at the time, you know, when you're searching, and especially when you're someone that you know, like that you know that you have a big pull on your heart, and you know you have a direction that God's calling you in, but you don't know the answer or the destination.
Exactly.
It's so easy to feel lost and doubt, but it's so beautiful. I know you and I spoke about this the other night, but it's so beautiful to look back and see his hand at work the entire way, piecing it all together, you know, like putting it all together beautifully. And so I think that's a reminder I try to tell myself every time I'm at a crossroads in life, or a transition period, or I'm a person that likes to know the answers. And,
me too.
You know, just tell me, God, okay? Like, tell me, where am I going? What am I doing?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a reminder I have to tell myself, look, like he's done all of this before. Mm-hmm. He's worked it all for good, right. You know, so just keep trusting in faith. Mm-hmm. And so that, I mean, that's been a big key, and you've really done that from a young age, as, you know, trusted him and followed him and served him. So I think that's a beautiful story. But what would have been, I mean, I can't even imagine. I know we've talked, I was an international studies major and did some mission trips, and, you know, had a career plan that I had anticipated having, and then took a 10-year break to be a stay-at-home mom. And now I'm back at it. But what have been some of your greatest struggles with evolving as the leader that God calls you to be, as the servant that he has you? What have been some of your greatest struggles along your journey?
Yeah. I think for me, as I was saying, is that many of us were kind of thrown into these big situations at a really young age, which is beautiful, and there's nothing wrong with it. But I think I lacked a lot of know-how. I didn't really know exactly how to develop myself and the skills that I needed, and kind of didn't know the skills that I needed until it was time. So I definitely failed in some ways in that work, even though we're all doing our best and we're all trying. So I think one thing for me that has been difficult is getting up after I've made a mistake and not letting it stay in my head, or letting that failure speak so much to me at the time, or if I've let a member of my team down or perhaps missed something, just trying to turn that into growth and turning into increasing my capacity instead of kind of just staying down in the dumps about it. Has been the key thing. It's something that I've struggled with.
I think women in general just have a hard time giving themselves grace, especially high performance women that, like yourself, that are so driven. And a lot of oftentimes you can see that they extend that grace to others so like effortlessly, but then, meanwhile beat themselves up.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. We are good at that as women.
And then what has been go ahead.
No, for me personally, I think, and these are more personal things. They don't really have so much to do with A21 or trafficking, but I just think when you're learning to work with people or learning to work on team or even with management and stuff, you grow those skills over time. But I think for me personally was just learning to make sure that I'm obeying God and that I'm doing what I believe in. And I'm doing it with integrity, but also not caring so much about other people's opinions or not trying to make everyone happy. And then trying to make everyone happy, that I'm failing to actually do what I know I need to do and to do it well. So that has been a big key thing for me, is learning that you can't make everybody happy all the time, and that you have to know that you're right with God and that you're right with your principles and integrity. And sometimes you just got to go forward with that. And if you're wrong, hey, you take it on the chin and you get up and go again and you say my bad and you do it better, but not living according to everyone else, but living according to my belief in God and what I should do has been a key thing for me.
Amen. And I think once you get your mind right with that, it's so much easier for everything else to fall into place. And, I know that I personally have to constantly remind myself that, like God's opinion is all that matters. That is the only opinion that matters.
Right.
And, am I bringing glory to him? Am I following his call? Then okay, then the rest of it's just going to have to sort itself out. So definitely. I think that's another thing that, you're not alone there. There's a whole lot of women that struggle with the exact same thing.
Someone once told me not even like in a Christian conversation, like just said, "Hey, Kyra, not everyone's going to like you. Just face it. Like that's just life." And that was so eye-opening to me, because I don't think someone ever just said it so out straight. And I was like, oh, you know what? You're right. Like I don't like everyone. Not everyone's going to like me. It's not the end of the world. It's okay if someone doesn't like me,
That's right. It's okay if I'm not your cup of tea. It's okay. But, there's someone else out there whose cup of tea you might be.
For sure.
And speaking of someone whose cup of tea you might be, you have recently just married a gorgeous, kind man that I had the privilege of meeting. Tell me a little bit about your newlywed status.
Yeah. So part of this whole, like I said, master weaver journey that God has me on with A21 has been meeting and marrying my husband, Johnny, who is Bulgarian. And he actually worked for A21 at the time. He helped start our social enterprise, Liberty, here in Bulgaria. So
we haven't talked about Liberty yet. Can you real quick just tell what that is quickly?
Yeah. So Liberty is our first attempt at a social enterprise under the heading of A21 on a more of a large scale. So we work, Bulgaria is in Eastern Europe, and part of our difficulty in working in places like Eastern Europe that are source countries or places where people are trafficked from has been when we rescue them and bring them back, we're taking them back to the same circumstances from which they were vulnerable in the first place. So we knew we needed an answer to that, and social enterprise was what we did to answer that. And that here it's been different businesses that give survivors job training and some of their first jobs outside of trafficking. Yeah, so we started Liberty as a social enterprise, and Liberty Cleaning. We had a cleaning company here in Bulgaria, and we also started Liberty Clothing, under which we started Liberty Scarves. So you may have seen beautiful woolen infinity scarves that are sold on the A21 store online. So that was started here in Bulgaria.
Yeah, I have one. So tell Johnny good job, because I love my Liberty scarf.
Oh, we're glad. Well, if you have one, chances are they've passed through his hands at some point in time.
So back to Johnny, back to the love story before we had to go over with the Liberty scarves. So he's from Bulgaria. You are from Alabama.
I am.
And so how are you guys navigating the international marriage and sorting it all out?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We kind of don't know how it's going to work out, but we're just kind of having to trust God and just kind of listen to him for his will, that we're where he wants us to be at any given time. Because we have opportunities. We can stay here. We can go to the States. We can go to a third country. Who knows? With A21, it's a grand adventure. Who knows what country is next? It does come with sacrifice. I'm very close with my family. So that definitely is a hard piece of it. And especially when you start thinking about having kids and are we going to have, money for all these airline tickets to go back and see my family. And so those are all, worries that I have, but, just trying to answer them by just asking God what he wants us to do. And Bulgaria is a beautiful country, but there's so much need here. There's so much, like, you can go out on the street and see need. There's poverty. It's the poorest country in the EU. It has the lowest minimum wage in the EU. On days that it's hard, I try to remind myself that in my mind and maybe in God's eyes, I'm much more useful here than I would be in beautiful California or beautiful suburban Alabama. Although that's maybe just my personal take on looking for the purpose as to being here in Bulgaria with him. But God may have us for a season in the States very soon. Who knows?
Well, I think that all comes back to us having to trust and know that he's orchestrated all of it beautifully. So I know that wherever he plants you, you're going to flourish. And I know that, from the age of 13, you've been trusting him and following him. And so I have no doubts that you will go where he leads you and where he wants you to go. So I love talking to you and chatting with you. And, I told my husband the other day, I said, one of the things about having friends all over the world is that I want to go hang out with my friends that are all over the world. So, we can talk sometime when it's not just a podcast interview also.
Yeah, I would love that. I love it how God gives the sort of divine moments and something just kind of clicks in your spirit and you kind of know that person is going to be in your life. And definitely when I met you, I had that feeling. So I'm very thankful for it. Thankful for another friend.
Oh, thank you so much. And I keep telling everyone, I can tell you for all of my life, but especially for the last 18 months, I have just seen people placed in my life over and over and over again that I immediately am like, okay, God brought this person here and they're going to be in my life forever. And I'm grateful for that. I'm so inspired by that. And I know that people at home listening are inspired and empowered by your story. And it definitely speaks to that whole, am I old enough? Do I have enough experience? Do I have enough knowledge? And it really speaks to just moving your feet and serving. So Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I do have to leave you though with, I ask one question at the end of each interview and it's a 2-part question, but if you were a superhero, what would your superhero name be? What would your superpower be that sets you apart from other superheroes?
Oh, I'm so not good at these questions, Brandy.
Well, I ask them because I feel like I interview modern day superheroes every day and that are just God's superheroes. And so like I told Melina, I'm like, your name would just be Melina because you are doing it right now.
Oh, wow. Well, I guess if I'd have to go with something, I'm so serious most of the time, but I do have a kooky side. So let's go with kooky Kyra.
I like that.
And I think, and maybe some other superheroes have it, but I probably would like the ability to see the future.
Yes.
So, react in reality to anticipate the future, kind of like rescuing people falling off of buildings or stopping national disasters or that kind of thing.
Yep. I love it. And I couldn't have given you a more perfect and fitting superpower. Thanks for being a team player and playing along with me.
Of course.
And let's see, what time is it there?
It is 5 to 6 p.m.
Oh yeah. So I'm going to go continue with my day, and you go enjoy your evening and tell your husband I said hello, and thanks for giving me some time to just hang out today.
Absolutely. Anytime. It was absolutely my pleasure. And I'm available if any questions come your way about A21 or trafficking. Feel free to give out my email or through you or however that works. Just thank you so much and for all that you're doing. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. I will put your email in the show notes so that if anyone has questions and wants to get in touch with you, that they can find you there.
All right. That sounds awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Oh man, I hope that you were inspired by Melina and Kyra's stories, and I hope that you were called to action to get out, move your feet, and be part of this revolution. Have you registered for the Walk for Freedom yet? What are you waiting for? Go to a21.org, Walk for Freedom, click on register, and search for a walk in your local city. We can't wait to have you be part of this movement. And as always, if you like what you heard in today's show, please go do us a favor, subscribe on iTunes, write a review, and heck, get crazy and share us on all forms of social media so that we can keep this great content coming to you each and every week. We look forward to seeing you again next week and can't wait to chat then.